Alaikum. This is Dr. Rahman Ali, University of Peshawar. In this lecture number 2 of the subject Introduction to Computer in ICT, we are going to discuss the latest technology trend in information technology. In this lecture, we will have a recap of the last lecture, then discussion on all these latest technology in ICT, and then roadmap for lecture number 3 with the conclusion. In our last lecture, we talked about characteristic of the computer in detail with examples and a lot of discussion, and you can find that lecture from this URL on YouTube. In this today's lecture, we are going to discuss the latest trend in technology, and on the top of this is artificial intelligence. So what is artificial intelligence? It is the intelligence of the human being which is embedded to a machine to work like a human. So we can say that building the machine which can learn like human being, then come up with some decision, and after decision act upon those decision accordingly. So this artificial intelligence always have the capability of thinking, then perceiving the environment in the situation, then having some proper representation of that perceived environment or situation, and then building some model, and it is this model which is used to come up with some decision, and that decision will be a wise one like a human being. So in this definition, we can see that artificial intelligence is the combination of three things: learning, reasoning, and action. In learning, it's the same as we human being start learning from our childhood. We see different events and their solution, different problems, and how they are solved. We learn all these things. So how computer learn these things? Different methods, supervised, unsupervised, and semi-supervised methods are used in the field of machine learning, artificial neural network, deep learning, genetic algorithm, neural network, and so many other technique which are used for learning the situation. Then once the model is learned using these method, then decision making is done, and that is done in reasoning. It is just like we think on some issue in our mind, and then we come up with some solution. So that is called reasoning, and there are so many types of reasoning that we will have some discussion on these in our subsequent lectures. And once this decision is released, then a proper action is taken. So but from this diagram we can see that if some problem comes in our mind, we think on that problem, and then we come up with some solution. So this problem is solved with the help of what we have learned, and then we use different reasoning methodologies in our mind to come up with some solution which is acted upon. So this artificial intelligence is on the top of the trending technologies so far. There are so many applications of this artificial intelligence that we will talk in our next lecture. Speech recognition, like Siri, that we talk in front of Siri and that responds to our speech. Then computer vision and CCTV camera and some other environment. Natural language processing, like Google Translator, machine and deep learning, virtual agent, decision management, artificial intelligence optimized hardware, biometric. We see the application of all these technologies in our daily life, and we will have a separate lecture on this one to discuss them in detail. So for that you need to subscribe to this channel to be tuned and get the notification when the lecture is uploaded. There is another technology which is called virtual reality. Virtual reality is nothing but it is computer generated simulation. An artificial three-dimensional environment. Here this simulation is performed with the help of some devices, that is a head mounted display like this one, gloves and body suits. So actually these devices, they are used for interaction with the computer generated simulated environment, and that's a three-dimensional environment. The user interact using these tools and technology or devices with that environment and simulate a real environment into a virtual one. Just consider the example that if we are unable to drive a car in actual, so we can do it by having a virtual reality application for driving a car. We will have to wear a head mounted display, some gloves, and we will sit in a stationary car, and the car should be started, and then these gloves, these and devices, they will let us into a virtual environment, and we will feel that we are actually involved in driving the car, taking a turn, and having overtake on another car. So we can realize and we can feel the actual environment in the form of a virtual environment. So why this virtual reality is used? So in situation where it is not feasible to actually perform that activity in a physical world, then we take help of this virtual reality. There is another related concept, closely related concept and technology to the virtual reality, and that is augmented reality. There is a little bit difference between these two, virtual reality and augmented reality. In virtual reality, we are taking a real environment and simulating it in a virtual world, in a virtual environment. But here in augmented reality, we combine two things. We combine the real world environment with some virtually created 3D images and videos and audios to enhance the actual and real world scenario. So we can say that an interactive experience of a real world environment where the object that resides in the real world are enhanced by computer generated perceptual information. Just take an example of some old heritage where the archaeological structure of those historical positions are not very much clear to understand that what was the culture of the people of that time. So we take that real environment and we add on some 3D images, videos and audios to enhance those old images or those old sites to have better understanding of that situation. So we take help of visual, auditory and haptic modalities to enhance the real environment and thus understand it correctly. So this is the concept of augmented reality. In augmented reality environment, we must have a combination of three things. The first one is we will have real-time interaction. Just look at this scenario and there is a device with which the user is interacting in real and enhancing this real environment by adding some modalities. So it will be a real-time interaction and there will be combination of real environment and virtual environment. The real environment is the streets of this city, and the virtual environment are some pictures with the help of visuals, auditory and haptic features. So accurate 3D registration of the virtual and real object. So when we have all these three things, we can build an augmented reality environment. If we go and differentiate between these two, so we talk about the difference in the last slide, that virtual reality, the user perceives the reality. It is completely based on the virtual information. But in case of augmented reality, it will be based on virtual environment as well as real environment. So we can say that augmented reality take help of both the real environment, the real surrounding environment and the virtual object. These virtual object will help to better understand this real environment. So why we use this one? To enhance natural environment or situation, like as I told you that if we visit some historical location and the architecture of that place or some old memories of that place are in some weak form and we cannot understand them properly, then we take help of the augmented reality to understand that better by combining the virtual objects and the real environment. Nowadays we have the technology of our group computing in our daily use, and this is a trending technology or the latest technology which is not been introduced in recent year, but the improvement is continued based on the demand of the businesses, demand of the organization and demand of the collaboration between different stakeholders. So work group computing is the technology which helps people to work in an electronic environment, though they will be sitting far away from each other in their sub campuses or in their site offices, but they will be able to interact with each other, to share the information with each other, to share the idea with each other, to have some brainstorming on the new designs of the product or on the new design of the software and things like this. So this is called work group computing, and this work group computing can also be called as is also termed as collaborative computing and groupware in the literature. This work group computation is in different levels, from very low level to a high level. In the low level work group computing, if there is a team of workers working on a single project and they are sitting either at same location or apart from each other, but they are contributing to the same goal of the project. So if an individual or a group of a number of individuals, they are working separately on the same goal of the project using some different technologies like word processor, spreadsheet and databases, we will call this kind of work group computing is the individual level work group computing. But if they are moving one step ahead from this kind of individual working environment to an interactive environment where the different teams sitting at different location or at different offices, they coordinate with each other using emails, using project managers, shared databases, workflow automation software, then we will call this kind of work group computation as the coordinated efforts or coordinated work group computation. But if we move one step ahead from this kind of computation to a very easy and a flexible environment in which all the parties and all the teams, they can work in an environment in which they don't feel that they are far away from each other. They can very easily and they can very flexibly share the ideas without having the feel that they are sitting far away or they are at some different timing from each other. So without the restriction or constraint of time and space, they are able to communicate with each other using a virtual workspace. Then we call this kind of computation is called collaborating computing. And for this, video conferencing and video chat and video messages and different platform that we are using nowadays, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and so many other platform can be used and we are using for collaborative work computing nowadays. As the technology improves, then the scientists and the computer programmers and expert, they are trying to shift the human cognitive computational capabilities into the computer. And this kind of computation in which an attempt is made to mimic the human cognitive capability into the software, we call it cognitive computing. So in cognitive computing, the mental processes involved in gaining knowledge and comprehension. This is called cognition, that how our mind knows about the things and how they perceive and they come up with conclusion. This is called cognition. Now if this cognition is shifted into the computer, either in the form of hardware or in the form of software using different technology like artificial intelligence and machine learning, to build such kind of software to mimic functionality of the human brain, like this is human brain, how human brain perceive, how it is captured by our sensory devices, and how the mind think on it and come up with some solution, and learning this environment and these events and these activities. So if we shift this capability into the computer in the form of hardware and software, this area or this technology is called cognitive computing. So here we can say that the use of computerized module to stimulate the human thoughts processes in complex situation where answer may be ambiguous and uncertain. Human has the God-gifted capability that it can handle various kind of problems, very complex, from very simple to very complex problem, having ambiguity and uncertainty very easily. Human being can very easily solve such complex problem, having ambiguous situation and uncertainty. So if we are able, and scientists are doing this, to shift and give this kind of capability to the computer, so this technology is called cognitive computing. For this cognitive computing, the adoption, interaction and contextual information will need to be considered while making the computer a cognitive one. Similarly, as the technology grows, and in the recent years, the IoT has been introduced. Everywhere we can see sensors, cameras, and social media networks. So there is a bombardment of information, data and information which is produced. But we see that the devices that we are using at our end, they are not enough to store this data, and they are not that much capable to process and compute this data at our end. So to come up with solution to this problem of storing this huge amount of data and performing the computation which need a lot of computation power, we need some mechanism, and that mechanism has been provided in the form of cloud computing. So in cloud computing, the storage capability and the processing capability is provided by some third party organization. they have set up their environment in the form of powerful computers, server computers, for processing, for storage, for holding different kind of application, heavy application which cannot run on the individual's computing devices, and some software. So those devices and those capabilities have been provided by third party. So we send our data over there, and if we want to keep that data stored, they will keep it safe and secure on their cloud storage. And if we want to have some computation on this data will be sent to the cloud, and the server on the cloud will perform the required operation which we need, and will give us the result on our devices. So this is the concept of cloud computing. In cloud computing, as we talked, it has two parts. One is front end and one is back end. So front end is the part of the cloud on which we are interacting with the cloud. So the end at which the user are sitting, that is called the front end. So we are using laptop, mobile phone, tablets, desktop and server to interact with the back end of the cloud. So in back end, there are three main components are part of the cloud. One is infrastructure, which is used for computational infrastructure, storage infrastructure, and network, which is established to have communication between the front end and the back end, different component of the back end. So network, storage and processing, that is called the infrastructure. Then once infrastructure is developed, then platform are needed to be set up on top of the infrastructure. So this platform includes databases and runtime environment to have execution of the processes in which we are interested, and on the top of this platform we have different application. If we are going to have financial analysis, if we have some collaboration, and if we are storing some data and we are giving some services to the community, so those kind of application will be on the top. So it's a three component at the back end, and based on these three components which are at the back end, the cloud has three service model. One service is provided by the infrastructure, which is called infrastructure as a service, IaaS. Infrastructure is a service, platform is a service, and similarly software is a service. So these three platform will be used, and these are the mechanism, these are the infrastructure, that at the infrastructure level storage and network will be there. At the platform level, as we discussed, databases and execution environment will be there, and at the software is a service level, emails and some other game software and those which we want to play. And these are those infrastructures, services of the cloud. Similarly, they are based on the storage. Based on the storage, we have four types of clouds: personal cloud storage, public cloud storage, private cloud storage, and hybrid cloud storage. On personal cloud storage, for example, I am using my Dropbox, Google Drive, iCloud, or OneDrive. I am using this much space which is freely provided by these cloud service provider. If I want to save my file over here, this will be personal cloud storage. And if I am using the public cloud storage of a government agency, then that will be public cloud storage. Private is owned by a single organization like any university or any college or any department, and hybrid can have any combination of the other threes based on the requirement of the organization. But this cloud storage, this cloud computing, which is an emerging area of research, but it's not yet that much emerging. But it has introduced another area which is called edge computing, and that is the emerging area, and that is the trending area of information and communication technology. What is edge computing? So as we discussed that in cloud storage and cloud computing, what we do, the data from the front end comes directly to the cloud storage, and the processing is done over the cloud storage on the cloud using different processing environment, and it is stored on the cloud. But this model has a limitation, and that limitation is that as the data grows day by day rapidly, then sending this data directly to this cloud storage and then having computation over there on the cloud and then sending this result back to these end user, it takes a lot of time. So it causes the problem of latency. And in some of the application and in some of the situation, we need quick access of the results, and we want to display that result because that's important based on the importance of the problem. So cloud computing cannot solve this problem, and for that the research is going on in the area of edge computing. What edge computing suggests is that put the data near to the edge. And what is edge in this case? The end user. The end user devices and the end user who need result of their data. So keep that data as much close as possible to them rather than to having it completely over the cloud. Machine to machine analysis and introduce some data buffering and optimization technique that keeps some data in the buffer and perform operation over here. And in some cases for real-time data processing, this data need to be as much close to the end user as much as is possible. So this is called edge computing. Now the computation is not performed completely over the cloud, but it is performed, some computation is performed over here in between the end users and the cloud storage, which is termed as edge computing. So we can say here that edge computing is a mini data center. actual data center is on the cloud, but a mini data structure of some of the important data is over here, on which some computation is performed, and this is called edge computing. Similarly, with the introduction of the new technologies and different areas, there is the concept of blockchain as well as a trending technology and latest technology. Especially it is used in the area of banking and financial institution, accounting, financial analysis, ledgers, due to the feature of blockchain, which is called blockchain security and privacy. This blockchain concept which is being introduced has a very good model for security and privacy. That's why this is heavily being used by banking sector, financial institution, and it is also heavily being used and is in use in computer science and healthcare and some other area as well, because in healthcare domain the data privacy of the patient is very much important. For financial institution, the financial record of their customer and some other organization that need to be kept protected, so blockchain technology is used. Now what this blockchain technology is? So it is a distributed environment in which the data is stored at different locations. It's a decentralized, distributed and public digital ledger where everyone can come and can write and update that ledger, but with some constraint, and those constraints let this blockchain technology the capability to keep the data secure. So this is a blockchain is a decentralized, distributed and open public digital ledger consisting of records which are stored over on the block in the blockchain. They are called blocks, and that is used to record transaction across many computers so that any involved block cannot be altered and backdates without the alteration of all subsequent record. So in blockchain the record is stored at different location. If these are the 5 computers and these computers are located at different places, so I will have a ledger on all the 5 computers, and the record, the transaction will be updated on all the computers which are located at decentralized location, at distributed location, and no one can change a value in this ledger located at this computer until and unless all the other relevant record have not been changed. So this gives us the capability to this computer or to this data to be kept as consistent as much possible, because for changing in a single value on a record which is called block in case of blockchain, at this computer will need to have change on all the other computer as well, and that need to be synchronized, which is not that much easy task. So this data will always be protected. So the blockchain is heavily being used in cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, and it is considered as future could be future of the money, and it is used for security and online privacy of the data of not only the financial institution but for of the other organization as well. There are different types of blockchain: public blockchain, private blockchain, hybrid or consortium blockchain, and side chain, which is not that much popular one. In the public blockchain, no access restriction is provided. This is a public location, the data is stored at this public location, and no restriction is provided to the people, and they can access the data without any restriction. So its example is Bitcoin. The private cloud, the private blockchain that has restriction, personal restriction of the data holder or of that computer holder, and no one can access that record and no one can change it. Its example is distributed ledger, and the third one is the hybrid one, or it is also called consortium blockchain, which is combination of centralized and decentralized feature, mean combination of the public and private. Some of the data is on the public blockchain and some is on the private blockchain, depending on the requirement of the organization. And in case of side chain, the primary blockchain and is associated with some sub blockchain, and they have linked with each other. If you want to change in one in the main blockchain, then you must have to change it in the primary or in the sub respectively. Similarly, cyber security is also an emerging, not emerging but a very trending area in the ICT. One can question that how it is a trending area. The reason is that what we do in cyber security, we are keeping our data secure from the threats and from the hacker. And how they do, they access our data unauthorized, illegally, and they are unauthorized to access it, but they are doing it using different means. And in cyber security, we are trying to protect this data from unauthorized access, modification, deletion, or hacking, and some other things. So the hacker always try to come up with some new technique of hacking the data. So from that perspective, we can say that cyber security is an emerging technology. Yes, it is emerging. Why? Because hacker always come up with some new attack method, and then the researcher in the cyber security area, they are trying to introduce a new protection method, cyber security mechanism, and that's why it's a continuous effort and a fight between the hacker and the security providers. As we know that technology is increasing and day by day, so another trending area is the effective computing. What is effective computing? Effective computing mean that understand behavior of the people, that behavior of the student, it can be of the parents, it can be of the children, this behavior can be of any of the customer. Understand them, that what are their feeling, and then act accordingly. So how this can be done? For this, the research area is affective computing, that recognize or analyze facial expression. There are 6, 7 to 8 facial expression, from which we can determine that a person is angry, disgust, happy, sad, so and so forth. So based on his mood, you can act accordingly. Just for example, if a person is in stress, and the computer automatically identify that he is in stress, and the computer based on the understanding, the computer automatically takes some action. And just take an example that a music goes start, or if the person is bored, and the computer identify from his facial expression, then the light should be off, and it should be suggested to the user that take rest. So all these things are possible if we have good facial expression recognition system. So this can be used for well-being, mean in the healthcare area, to cover the patient and to understand the feeling of the student in the classroom, or to diagnose sign and symptoms of the diseases. But it's a very challenging area, because each different people have different kind of expression. So from that perspective, that's effective computing is a hard and challenging area. How this effective computing works? In this effective computing, the first step is to sense the expression. The camera from the mobile phone, from the CCTV, from the computer, that will sense the expression of the person, and that can be not only from the face, but it can be from microphone. You can understand the expression of a person, or the behavior of a person, by analyzing his voice. So it is sensed. Once you have that information, then you need to identify the pattern. So in this part of this effective computing process, in the first stage, the facial expression, the body posture, speech and gestures, they are identified. And once they are identified, then pattern recognition operation is performed. And in pattern recognition, features are extracted, those features, correlation and different relationship between different variables of this expression, and of the personal profile of the person, that is determined, and then a classification model is developed, which is evaluated, which tells us that this facial expression recognition system is this much accurate. And after that, the action is performed. So in an action, changing a quiz or recommending a set of video to fit the mood of the learner. So based on that facial expression, something is suggested to that person for whom this facial expression recognition system has been developed. Another trending technology and its application in health is human technology integration, in which replacement of human parts and extension of human capability with engineered device is done. Artificial heart, artificial leg, and these kind of devices, and this kind the devices are introduced and they are integrated to the human body. So the key research in this is that how these engineered artificial devices are integrated with the human body, how they will work in a collaboration with each other without harming each other and affecting their duty. So in human technology integration, we can see that there are different systems, wearable computing like smartwatch. We wear smartwatch and that determine the physical activity that we are performing on daily basis and intimate us if we are shot by the daily target. And there are ubiquitous computing environment. So this human technology integration can be implemented using these four methods. Wearable computing, this person has wearable computing, wearable computers, and from those wearable devices, sensors, smartwatch, all the equipment of the house, they are connected and automatically messages are sent to him or from his home devices, from smart home to his body to do this and do that. So this is wearable computing. Another one is pervasive or ubiquitous computing, in which computational capability into everyday object to make them perfectly communicate and perform useful tasks in a way that minimize the end user interaction with the computer. So in ubiquitous computing or in pervasive computing, the idea is to introduce sensor in each and everything. If you are building a smart house or smart city, you have to introduce sensor everywhere, and those sensor will automatically, each and every object in that environment must have a sensory device, and that will be connected to some central control room or environment to send and receive messages. So this will eliminate the interaction of the user and will minimize it to some extent and will bring us automation and seamless working of the devices. And another area of the human technology integration is engineered tissue and organ. So there is a research in this one, though there are a lot of issue over here that whether it's ethical or unethical, that's a separate debate. We are not going to dig into that one. But in tissue engineering and prosthetics, means artificial legs, hands and fingers, these are the four areas which can have the concept of human technology integration in the area of ICT. Another concept which is not known but research is which is not new one, but research is going on in this area, and that is quantum computing. Quantum computing is the use of quantum phenomena which is been borrowed from the physics, and from quantum phenomena the superposition and entanglement, they are used and they are borrowed from the physics domain into the computer. So how these quantum computer work? They use qubits rather than bits. What does this mean? This means that if we have classical computer, that the normal computer that we are using, that computer represent data in the form of 0 and 1, which is actually a series of switches, on and off situation. But in quantum computing, the concept of using 0 and 1, which is switch on and switch off, this is a slow concept of transmitting data. So the concept of qubits is used, and in this the superposition and entanglement are used. What does this mean? This means that superposition means that where they have both on and off at the same time or somewhere on a spectrum between the two. This concept is called superposition. Here in classical computer, the status of the signal at one time, it will be either 0 or it will be 1. So the research is continued in the area that why it is not possible to have these two signal at the same time, the occurrence of 0 and 1, why it cannot happen at the same time. So in physics, in quantum computing, this is the concept. The superposition is that concept that both on and off can have, or it can be at the same time, or if they are not at the same time, they are at different time slots, then there must be a spectrum between these two, and that spectrum should also be used for processing, data transmission and other activity, which will make the computer faster as compared to the classical computer. And the second concept is entanglement. Two particles are linked together even if they are physically separate. So to make it clear, if we have a coin and we want to toss it, so we know that the coin has two sides, head and tail. So when we throw the coin, when we toss the coin and it comes to the earth, it will have either tail or head. So this is the case of classical computers, that 0 and 1, head or tail, or signal on and off cannot happen at the same time. But superposition and entanglement concepts of the quantum computing says that if we are tossing this coin, so while it is moving upward and coming downward, during this moment there are the possibility, though the head and tail are separate sides from each other, but there are possibility that while moving up and down, it's in rotation, and that rotation give us the idea or the concept that both the on and off, the head and tail, can occur at the same time, and if not at the same time, there is some spectrum between these two, and thus they are separate, physically separate, but they are linked together in this area. So scientists are trying to use this for the computer, and it will help us to increase the processing speed of the computer. So quantum computers, that perform computation are known as quantum. Computer that perform quantum computation are known as quantum computer, and by using subatomic particle, quantum computer will have the ability to represent a number of different states simultaneously. So what can quantum computer do for us? Google is using it in self-driving car, because self-driving car has a lot of complex situation to handle, and for that lot of complex situation, heavy computation and quick response need to be taken while the car moves on the road. So for that, fastest computers need to be used. So Google is using it in self-driving car, and it is vital for modeling chemical reaction, complex chemical reaction, and for cure of Alzheimer's disease and cryptography. These applications are using up to some extent quantum computer technology. And when this quantum computer will be really available in the market for the public? So IBM has its quantum computer, and they provide access using the website, and they provide the access to play the card game on it using this IBM quantum computing. And keep in mind that currently the available quantum computer, the best quantum computer, they have 50 qubits. So increasing the number of qubits, the speed of the computer increases. And in 2019, Google claimed that they have quantum supremacy, means that they claim that we have introduced quantum computer, but the claim is not 100% correct, as IBM says. So what we can expect? We can expect that quantum computing could change the world, but right now its future remain uncertain. It's not clear that when it will come, and if really it comes for public use, it will change the world. Similarly, apart from these technology, nowadays the developer of the software, they are trying to have the technology of developing software with user friendly environment, which have the concept of UI UX, which is called UI, user interfaces, and UX means user experience, that the interfaces of the software need to be developed in such a way that even a disabled person, a blind person, a child, or an old age person, they can easily use the computer and take some benefit out of it. So this is the research in UI UX, which is called user interfaces, user experience. And similarly, a lot of research is also going on in the area of entertainment, by having some games, movies, songs, and some other educational entertainment for the children in the form of problem solving using mathematics, statistics, English language, and so many other gamification type of software. Similarly, it's not the new trending area, but it's multitasking and multi-processing. In multitasking, our CPU has the capability, or single CPU has the capability to perform more than one task at the same time. For example, I am writing a letter to my friend, I'm writing my thesis, sending an email to my friend, and at the same time I'm searching on the web for some sports event, and at the same time I have sent one document to the printer for printing. So this more than one tasks are going to be performed by this same processor, one single processor, and all this which is provided and helped out, that is the operating system. And similarly, there is the concept of multi-processing, mean that in a single computer more than one processor are installed, like Core i7, Core i5, Core i3, and those processor, this is processor 1, 2, 3, and they have only one operating system installed on it, and single one memory and input output devices, same input output devices, same memory, and different processor. So the task will be executed in parallel. Here the tasks are executed in multitasking, the tasks are executed in sequential way. Task from this one, then from the second one, then from the third one, but these are executed so quickly that we cannot feel that they are executed in a sequence, but we feel that they are executed in parallel, but actually they are not in parallel. But in case of multiprocessing systems, the task can be executed in parallel. So this was all about this trending technology. In our next lecture, we will have discussion on the trending technology of the artificial intelligence in specific, and we will also discuss types of the computer. If you have liked this video, this lecture, you can subscribe to this channel, you can comment if you have any question, and you can refer this to your relevant friend. Okay, thank you. And if you need to look this lecture and study it from, you can consult this Introduction to Computer and ICT second edition book written by Dr. Rahman Ali and Asmat Ali. Thank you.